Hey, what's up, guys? Rideshare guy coming to you today, and I'm going to be talking about your 2014 tax summary from Uber. We're going to go over the 1099 Misc and the 1099K and basically what they mean for you guys drivers out there, and also how to interpret it because, as you've probably realized by now, it's pretty damn confusing, and Uber did not do us any favors as far as the calculations and or the explanations. So spent the last few hours kind of going over this and comparing it to my actual earnings, my take-home pay, and statements that I got from Uber, and I think that I've figured it out. So let's go through it together and figure it out for ourselves. So the first thing you want to understand is what exactly a 1099 is. And I've seen a lot of people worried that, oh, the number that Uber is giving me on my 1099, I didn't actually make that much. Now, it's really not that big of a deal because what a 1099 essentially is when Uber, or any company for that matter, issues a 1099, an official 1099, all that means is that they're also going to report whatever numbers on that 1099 to the IRS. Okay, so that's all it means. Now, the IRS, especially when they see 1099, they know that you might have other deductions, you might have expenses because you guys are all business owners, right? And so you know the number that's on there, if you say $10,000, Uber reports $10,000 as your earnings to the IRS. The IRS knows that it doesn't necessarily mean you made $10,000, right? You could have tons of thousands of dollars in expenses and whatever. And so when you do your taxes, the number you start off with the top might be 10,000, but then after all the deductions and expenses and all that good stuff, that you guys, can talk to your CPA about. Then down at the bottom, the number that you're going to actually pay taxes on could be very easily much less than that. And it likely will be, almost guaranteed will be, if you have certain deductions and expenses, right? So that's something to consider right there in the first place. Now, the first thing we'll cover the 1099 Misc pretty easily. I already did a video breakdown that I'll leave a link to in the show notes about the difference between the 1099K and the 1099 Misc. And it looks like for whatever reason, Uber is voluntarily giving these 1099Ks to every single driver, even though they didn't meet the $20,000 and 200 transaction limit. I have no idea why they're doing that. It's more work for them. I'm assuming it somehow benefits them though, or is somehow in their favor. I know that these guys wouldn't go above and beyond unless they knew there was something in it for them. So let's talk about that Misc first though. So basically the Misc is actually super simple. When I look at mine, it's going to have any of your referrals, driver, passenger, things like that, and then any other miscellaneous bonuses or anything like that you got. For example, when I first started, there was a $1 per trip incentive. So I think I have a bunch of those $1 per trip incentives, okay? So you basically take that total and the number that's in your summary on your partner dashboard, those numbers are going to match exactly what's in your official 1099K and Misc, or at least they do on mine, the total. Right, so that number that they're reporting to the IRS, that total for the Misc, that should actually be pretty spot on. For me, at least, when I look at it, it's referrals and miscellaneous. Yeah, I made that money and I don't see it accounted for anywhere else. So that's money that I made. Now, when I add the money from my 1099 Misc to my 1099K, and I compare that to how much money I earned from Uber, it's a lot more, right? So Uber is telling the IRS that I made a lot more than I actually did before I take any expenses, before I take any deductions or anything like that. So let's find out why, okay? Now, to be honest, the easiest thing that you guys can do right now, if you don't want to mess around with any of this 1099K or 1099 Misc stuff, just go in to your Uber partner dashboard and add up all your statements, right? How much money did you make each statement, right? You should have a maximum of 52, and obviously you could do it by hand, but you can also, what I did was I basically just went in, I copied and pasted the whole, so from the upper left to the bottom right, and it grabbed, like 20 statements at a time or whatever, and then I basically put that into Excel and it copies over perfectly, and you can just sum up all the money you made, and then boom, right there you have a number. Maybe it's $20,000. That's how much you made from Uber. You don't even need to worry about the K or the Misc or anything like that, as far as knowing how much money you made. Now, for the deductions and expenses and things like that, you're gonna have to make sure that you have accurate documentation to figure all that stuff out. And Uber, they're not really super helpful with that kind of information, but hopefully you guys have been doing a really good job of documentation, because that's pretty much the most important thing. Okay, so right now we're going to go into the 1099K breakdown. If you, for whatever reason, want to compare, if you don't like that first easy method, if you want to do something a little more difficult and you want to figure out how Uber came up with this math, I'm going to tell you guys how to do that right now. Okay, so when you look at your 1099K breakdown, your summary, Obviously, the official 1099K that Uber passes out only has your total earnings and then your month-by-month earnings, and that's it. So you really don't know where that money comes from or really what it means at all. But when you do go and look at your summary, at least on mine, it has gross fares, which is Uber fee included, and then it also has, in bold, it has tolls, split fare fee, safe rides fee. And then down in the other item section, it'll have device subscription and Uber fee, and then it also has on-trip mileage, right? So these are all the numbers you basically are going to need right now if you want to figure out how much you actually made from Uber. And so basically what you can do if you want to check, so basically you can add up all the money you made from your statements. And if you want to be able to get that number, you have to basically add your 1099 Misc earnings plus your adjusted 1099K earnings. If you add your Uber 1099K and your 1099 Misc, it's not going to match up to the money you actually made. It's going to be a lot higher, right? Because it includes things like Uber fee and these safe ride fees and all these things that are not really your responsibility. So let's break it down right now. I'm going to try to make this as clear as possible. And hopefully I won't screw this up because it is pretty confusing. I've done a couple calculations right here on my screen. So I'll take a look and we can do that together. So basically, you have your 1099K amount that Uber is going to provide you. Okay, so and that's your, when you start up at the top, that's going to be your gross fares, right? So everything that you made from Uber. Okay, that they say you made, I should say, right, before we take out any of these fees. So right now I'm looking at this 1099K breakdown, right? Let's say whatever, it's $10,000 or whatever they say that you made, right? So now from that number, you basically are going to go and next thing you look at is tolls. Now you guys maybe you have some other ones that aren't on here. You're going to have to figure out how to add those if I don't cover what they are. Now tolls are an interesting one because they're included in your gross fare, but they have to be deducted as a separate expense, similar to like what you would do with mileage, right? Because with toll, you pay for it out of pocket and then Uber reimburses you, right? So that's like saying if you do $100 in tolls, Uber's paying you that $100, but really that's not income, right? Because you also spent $100 on actual tolls. It's reimbursement, right? So you got to make sure that you also expense that, right? So you're going to have to subtract that way down the road, okay? When you're doing your mileage and things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's probably why it's bolded. But for these calculations, you can basically ignore the tolls. They're included in that gross fare amount. Now, so what you're going to do is you're going to add up your split fare fee, your safe ride fee, your device subscription fee, and then also the Uber fee. So those four things, all right, you subtract that from the number that's on your 1099K breakdown as your gross fare, and that's going to give you your total. Okay, and now that total number that you get, let's say, you start with 10,000 and after all, you subtract those four things, you get down to 6,000, for example, okay? Now that total, all right, when you take it and you basically add it to your 1099 Misc earnings, then that should equal what you have on your pay statement. Okay, so hopefully that's not too confusing, but that's kind of when I look at it right here, that's what I have. You take your total earnings and then subtract the split fare fee, the safe ride fee, because those are both charged straight through to the customer, right? So they're basically going through you, right, to Uber, and then your device subscription, which is obvious, and then the Uber fee, which is another obvious one, right? And so basically you add those four things up, subtract it, and then the way that I checked it, I didn't do this for every single month. I mean, you could make a little spreadsheet and do it for every single month, but since on that 1099K, they give you your monthly breakdown, you can actually go in and do 1 month's worth of calculations. You take your four statements, boom, and you can calculate it just like that, right? All right, so that's pretty much it. That's all I have right now for this breakdown. But, obviously, once you come up with those numbers, I think the easiest way, honestly, you can go through all that complicated math. But really, if you just add up your statements from Uber, that's going to be the number you have. And you can use things like the toll amount to know, all right, now, talk to your CPA, obviously, and, because this video is for informational purposes only, right? I got to give that disclaimer. But, once you have that amount, add it up from your pay statements, you say, all right, can I deduct things like tolls now, right? So you know that the split fare fee, the safe ride fee, the device subscription, and the Uber fee, they're already taken out of the amount in your pay statement, right? So only things that you need to think about are the tolls and then obviously the on-trip mileage, right? Uber provides on-trip mileage. Let's say they give you, you were 1,000 miles on trip, right? But for me personally, I'm going to be deducting miles as soon as I leave my house. Now, I kept a really good record, really good log. Now with IRS, they say the 3 rules with IRS: documentation, documentation, documentation. So even, I'd even hesitate that on-trip mileage from Uber is enough to deduct that. I might personally, I might even say that you need to make sure you have your own logs in addition to that to make sure that it's deductible. So hopefully this breakdown made sense, and you guys are going to be well on your way to understanding. I think if you go and just add up your pay statements, and if you want to double check, you can do that math too. And feel free to leave a comment too, and I can help work you guys through it. But I do think that little trick with, if you do want to go through the math, do it, maybe test 1 month and add everything up and see how it makes sense and how it looks. All right, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more.